And we're live. How's it going, everybody? It's Eli, the Shredneck, here from Curb Stomp Productions. And here with me today is the one and only Mr. Tyrant of Othalan. How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, bro. Thanks, man. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing pretty well. You just dropped your debut studio album, Blood and Iron. I bet that was really exciting. It's definitely a big deal to have your first studio release under your belt.
It was, man. It's my first. It's my first baby. I've been learning how to record music at home. I've got my studio set up, and it's like I've been kind of DIY teaching myself like how to work it all, which has been fun because it was like the recording process of it was like each song I kind of like learned a little more about how to record better than the last song. Pretty much up to the point where after I finished the last song, I had to go back through and re-record everything again just to have it on par with the last song.
Yeah, recording is definitely a process that it takes a bit to really understand how to effectively record a song.
Oh
So
yeah, it's
the fact that you wrote, recorded, and produced all that on your own is pretty wild.
yeah. I mean, it's just something where it's like I've always wanted to have my own home setup because it opens up a lot of opportunities for me to make as much music as I want at whatever pace I want. A lot of times when bands get signed to labels, they're put under a contract where the label expects them to produce X amount of albums in a certain time frame. And I feel like even though I want to release a lot of music, I just feel like I wouldn't write as well of a song if I knew I was forced to by contract. So,
And that's a very interesting point there because we've talked about that a little bit, because we are a label where we were very keen on not doing that because creative freedom is kind of one of our big goals with Curb Stomp. So um, the fact that there are so many labels that are dead set on, I guess, making their product worse, because when someone makes an album they don't want to make, it comes out really, really piss poor as a final product.
yeah.
And
I mean, a good example of that, though I'm not really a big fan of the group, is honestly Green Day has an album like that where they just had to. One of my friends showed me where they had to just give them an album because otherwise they would have been sued because obviously breaching contract and uh yeah, it was hot garbage.
yeah, I'm not super familiar with Green Day's catalog. Uh, However, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, signed to a major label as a punk band, and face the consequences. I guess that's kind of
Yeah.
my paradigm about it. So, uh, what what was the creative process for this album like? I mean, obviously, there were parts of it that were probably new territory for you. I don't know if you've produced music before, but outside of having to kind of learn the ins and outs of production, what was the creative process for Blood and Iron like?
Well, honestly, the creative process for me is I write music all the time. But you're right, though. The biggest thing that made a difference was actually like keeping the songs, learning them, and recording and producing them because most of the time I will just pick up my guitar and I'll simply start playing. Sometimes I'll get something great, sometimes I can't think of anything at all. But it hit. It was a little different this time around. Um, Going into picking up the guitar and having a little more purpose behind it rather than just jamming, like telling myself, like, okay, I'm going to write the next song for this album. And I know for me, it's not very true cult kind of nature to do this, but I wanted to have more fun with this album because I wanted to make it a little more catchy and like rock and roll sounding and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I had like fucking 80s hair metal bands like pop up in my head before I picked up the guitar. Like I'd listen to like Cinderella or Wasp or some shit before I picked up the guitar.
That's a really interesting. It's kind of an interesting twist. You don't really think of like bringing in elements of like rock and roll and especially not hair metal into a genre like black metal. Uh, and it's definitely a refreshing paradigm in a genre that tends to take itself very deadly seriously to want it to be just kind of fun. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that it's a very unique paradigm. Was that kind of did that worry you that like maybe black metal fans wouldn't really be down with your paradigm because
It didn't really worry me. It was more like I came to terms with it as I was recording the album. I'm like, there's going to be diehard black metal fans out there that they're not going to like my music. They're going to say it's not true black metal. It's not cold enough, or it's not evil enough, and that's fine. I don't expect everyone to enjoy it, but I mean, a good example is Abath from Immortal and his own band Abath. I mean, they
yeah.
are one of the biggest black metal bands out there, but the dude doesn't take himself seriously. He has a good time. Now, when he's writing the music, he takes it very seriously, and that's how I am about it. Is I like to have fun with my stuff. I listen to black metal, like it hits me the same way like an 80s hair metal band would. Like I get hyped with it, it puts me in a good mood, and I take the music writing of it very seriously, but also like I just on a personal level, I just can't be like grim at the same time. Like you see, like fucking the die-hard true cult black metal bands do and whatnot.
The
And
guys
I'm
that
not shitting on that. It has its place. It's just
oh
it's
yeah,
not my place.
it certainly has its place, and your posts are definitely indicative of kind of a sense of fun. Uh,
Mm,
and it is really interesting that the music writing. I think for any band that's not explicitly like a joke band that's like, oh, look how shitty we are. Uh, I think that it is important for any band to take the writing of songs very seriously, but there is a balance, I think, where you have to write stuff that you enjoy playing and that you have fun playing, especially if you're going to take
mm,
that into a live setting, right? Um,
mm,
because if you're not having fun playing a song, the audience is gonna know. They're gonna
yeah,
know that you're not enjoying
they're gonna
yourself and that
see
you
the
don't like it. Uh, I was
yeah.
watching you brought up hair metal. I was watching like an interview with Janie Lane from Warrant, um, where he was talking about Cherry Pie, right? And he just had nothing behind his eyes. Like he just sat there and talked about how much he fucking hated that song. And
I hate it too. So
oh yeah, yeah. I don't think anybody likes that song. Uh maybe boomers.
yeah.
But it's a song that's utterly worthless when the guy who wrote and sang it fucking hates it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you say that, but Varg hates all of his own black metal music now. Like he, it's
Well,
funny
Varg
you mentioned
Varg
that.
doesn't even
He
like
ex-
metal.
Yeah.
anymore.
He shit talks his own black metal albums that like made major influences on people, and now he just makes like LARPy fantasy music, which is cool too, but
Yeah,
hey, he made good black metal.
I'm quite a fan of dungeon synth myself, so sometimes I'm in the mood for that. But
Yeah.
you know, Varg's a curmudgeonly old fucker.
I think he's just insane at this point.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. I mean, I remember watching like one of his videos because like back in when he was on YouTube, he was like a one man meme factory. It was just like
Yeah.
I don't like heavy metal anymore. I only listen to Iron Maiden. Like,
Damn. Embarrassing yourself like that, calling yourself an Iron Maiden fan in public. Yeah, that's right, people. I said it. I don't like Iron Maiden. So
well, listen here, okay? Uh, I like them, but you're well within your rights not to. Could be worse. Could be much worse.
hmm
You know, there. We did a stream where we listened to really bad metalcore songs, and there are people out there that like those. So
I'll stand that shit. Yeah.
yeah. So you did mention earlier in the interview, and this is something that kind of comes back in on itself. Uh, that you had like a pretty wide range of influences. You've mentioned this to me in conversation before as well. Is like obviously black metal being the obvious one, but of course punk, rock and roll. I think you even said a tiny bit of thrash. Um,
Yeah.
how was it balancing that? Like, what would was there like a challenge in kind of trying to bring all those elements together into something that felt cohesive?
It is kind of hard a little bit because the way I write songs where I mix genres, and this is to me why I love black metal. And again, true cult people might not agree with this, but black metal to me is like horror movies. You can make so many genres and types of horror movies. I feel like if you put yourself in the horror category, you open yourself up to so much freedom while still being horror. You have horror comedies, you've got like gore films, you've got ones that like cover deep topics. Same thing with black metal. It's like I feel like black metal is to me it's the perfect foundational genre if you're wanting to fuse other things, and that's kind of what I keep in mind when I write songs specifically for Othalan. Is I kind of like mix all these genres together while still trying to keep black metal as the foundation.
Yeah,
So I still use the varying types of chords that you would hear in black metal. um I still try to keep that sense of like coldness, quote unquote, in the music. But yeah, it's hard sometimes because like certain songs off the album, like "Cry for War," fantastic song, but it's I had to rewrite it a couple of times because it ended up being too much of one sound instead of the other and whatnot.
yeah. Well, and I think that in any band, any musical project, there's always gonna be that little period where, and it usually starts with like the first album, where you're really just trying to find your sound,
Yeah, for
uh,
sure.
which I would say is, I would say it's very normal. But it,
Uh,
you were talking about how black metal was like a good a good base to build off of with music, and
yeah,
a good thing to fuse with different subgenres, and
yeah.
obviously we've seen a lot of that, especially recently with like war metal has kind of, I've noticed, grown in popularity a good bit. uh
Blacken's thrash.
Black
I know you
thrash.
won't like it, but they're mixing like black metal with deathcore now. Um,
Yeah,
like
I'm
in all of
aware
the
of like Carnifex has been kind of growing, and they're basically just like a fusion between deathcore and black metal. Not my thing. Not my thing at all. But like,
It's
fair
still
enough.
just the principle of the fact that there's all these different genres that are like mixing their music with black metal, because it's not hard, I feel like, to mix black metal into a genre. Honestly,
Well,
I
because
would almost say it's harder to write a pure black metal song than it is to write something that has that influence in it.
or just black metal with influences from outside it. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, because I think that black metal as a genre is very elemental, right?
It's
There's
evolved a lot.
Yeah, but I'm saying black metal as like in its base form is very elemental. There's not a lot of uh frills or really definitive things that you know make it
It
one thing.
it's hard to describe what makes something black metal,
That's what I'm saying.
because again,
You could see it. I was having a very hard time kind of like thinking of what
yeah,
I was trying to say.
it's hard defining something as black metal, because you've got people that will use the terms like first wave, second wave, and third wave black metal, and they consider all of those waves, like the bands that are in them, they consider them black metal. But if you look at them and put them side to side, they're very different sounding bands. I mean, you talk about first wave black metal that people would consider bands like Celtic Frost, Bathory, Merciful Fate, shit like that. They all sound very different from going into the second wave of like
I would say with the exception
Mayhem
of
and shit
I
like
would
that.
say Bathory is kind of the exception to that because Bathory was definitely the band that really just laid the groundwork for black metal because black metal was a really loose categorization when it was initially
It's
introduced.
Yeah, and it still is. That's why there's a it's an indescribable thing. But if you listen to black metal and you make music, you will hear that no matter what and what that person writes. Even if they're literally just writing a punk album or a folk metal album or something like that, you will hear the black metal in their music writing, because there's an indescribable sensation, or like overall feeling. And I think the word to use for it is just the overall atmosphere of the music. Is That's what black metal is. It has atmosphere to the song. It goes beyond the immediate literal song you're listening to.
Well, I would kind of argue is that black metal itself, because of how foundational it's been in the development of extreme metal as a whole, uh, is kind of what I would say it's the basis of extreme metal itself. Because you think about uh, Venom were really instrumental in creating black metal, but also uh, influencing the first wave of thrash, which bled in and influenced the creation of death metal. So
Hmm.
ultimately, if we're going to use black metal in this very loose form, we're
So
gonna
many things.
yeah, if we're gonna use black metal very loosely and not just describing a subgenre of heavy metal, uh, black metal itself is the basis for all extreme metal.
Hmm. And that's why, backtracking a bit, that's why I mix so many different sounds into my music, is because I have that atmospheric writing of what one would consider black metal. It just naturally comes out in my music. So even if I mix other genres in there, like I said, like Blood and Iron is like influenced by, it's influenced by black metal bands that have like very punk rock and rock and roll like drum beats. Like Satanic War Master was a huge influence, at least as far as like rhythm and drumming goes, for this album, because they have certain songs like Black Metal Commando that just has this like very 4/4 kind of hard rock drum beat to it,
Yeah,
and that's the kind.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I love that shit. I mean, it's not as heavy, maybe per se, as like playing like just straight chunky heavy riffs, like if you're listening to something like Frozen Soul or whatever. But
But yeah, I mean,
it
you're looking at two completely different sounds, because black
yeah
metal isn't really intended to be that sort of bludgeoning, like brute force attack. Uh, I feel
yeah
like black metal is more protracted and maybe even in a way like agonizing. But that's
hmm
kind of the point.
hmm
I've always described the different like phylums of extreme metal in very very violent terms, I would say. Like
yeah.
when I talk about thrash metal, uh I think of it as being like cut, right? Cuz it has this very very sharp, very tight, very I would say like a cutting tone. Like the tone is definitely intended to
Yeah,
sort of bring a feeling of like sharpness to a riff. Uh
yeah.
Death metal, I would say, man, it's so weird when I have to explain it's so weird explaining this to people that I view like subgenres of metal as like methods of being killed, but it totally works, right? Death metal is the sound of being beaten to death. Uh it's
Wouldn't
blunt.
that just be beatdown?
Yeah, but we're not talking about hardcore. We're talking about metal. But that is an excellent point. When I think of like death metal, it's like you're being bludgeoned, it's blunt, it's it's hard hitting, that kind of thing.
Head
Black
shoveled off like Cannibal Corpses.
exactly. Yeah. Black metal is like a slow, protracted, like suffocating or bleeding out. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
the most horrible and like long and painful way you could think to die. That's the kind of
And it's the worst sounding genre too.
it is. It is. um, Circling back to other extreme metal subgenres, I did notice a pretty strong melodic death metal influence in the music. I know for a fact because we've been friends for a while that you're a big fan of melodic death metal, and
Yep.
wondering how you sort of managed to work that into the album. Because I thought that was a
It,
really interesting twist on kind of the melodic black metal formula to include elements of that in it.
well, for me, black metal, a lot of times, you kind of get it in two forms. It's either like very like grimy and punky sounding, which you get that in my album. You get like grimy, punky songs, like again, "Cry for War."
Oh yeah,
But
I caught a
then
couple D beats on the on Cry for War.
hmm But then you also get other black metal that's like very atmospheric and melodic. Like you can get like incredibly like beautiful sounding black metal like Agalon,
Oh yeah,
Eldamar, stuff like that. And I wanted to find like a happy medium between that grimy and beautiful. So it's like you've got Blood and Iron, that the self-titled track, very kind of like a little more cold sounding black metal. But then you've got like songs like you've got like Steal Thyself and whatnot. That's almost in the beginning sounds like an intro to like a power metal song kind of deal.
and I think that fusion of uh of those elements is what has put Blood and Iron so high on my list of releases this year. I mean, you know, obviously I had my rough patch with black metal where I really didn't want to listen to it, but as I got, further down the rabbit hole and really started to enjoy it, I did notice that there was still very little variety, uh, at least in black metal that came out after the 90s.
It
I would,
takes exploring to find like good black metal bands.
yeah. But what I really liked about Blood and Iron was that just to me, it was a really really fresh, entertaining take on black metal as a formula. Uh,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I mean, like I said, pat yourself on the back. That it was fantastic stuff. Um,
The whole idea I had in my mind with Blood and Iron, like everything about it, from song titles and lyrics to like the actual like musical composition and whatnot, is I wanted it to be like almost like a concept album without the lyrics actually telling the story. So I know that's not exactly a concept album, but I did the whole idea in my head when I was writing the songs was just war. Like not like the brutality of war, but like going back to like you've got the songs that you would listen to through the album, like the intro, "Crashing Steel," sounds very much like a song like you're getting ready to charge into a battle and whatnot. But then you've got songs like "Fear Das Volk" that are supposed to be like the more triumphant, uplifting songs, and then you have like other emotions of war, like loss. So I have like "Tears of a Fallen Empire," supposed to be a lot more sad sounding and whatnot. So that was the idea in my mind. Was like I pictured this like grand-esque like Lord of the Rings style battle, like between like fucking hobbits and orcs or whatever, and I
it,
just kind of thought about like the different phases of the battle, like again from the charging to being in the fight to losing someone to winning, and I wanted to put all of that in.
it's kind of interesting because you're taking an approach to lyrical storytelling and kind of setting a tone for your album that even though the album is undeniably black metal, it almost reminds me more of how a power metal band might approach writing a song, which
Hmm.
is or not writing a song but writing an album. Uh,
Yeah,
and that's an incredibly interesting creative direction for a black metal band to go in,
yeah,
especially with again how curmudgeonly the fans can get. it,
yeah. But you know, I feel like pissing people off with your music is part of the black metal attitude in the first place. I mean, when
yeah,
Dark Throne wrote that album, "Fuck Off and Die," like I don't think they were writing that with the intentions of making people smile. I think they
no,
were telling people to fuck off and die. So, yeah, it's like to sit there and say I have to write black metal that pleases everyone goes kind of against the principle of it in the first place.
yeah, that's an amazing point. Uh, to that end, I remember you mentioned something very specific that you had this conception of a new direction for black metal. Go ahead and tell me what you meant by that.
Well, I basically, especially for like future black metal musicians, I just want people to think more outside the box. Like, I like some of the true cults, like very evil sounding black metal, like Horna is amazing, Dark Funeral, stuff like that. But I feel like what kind of kills the overall vibe of black metal is everyone trying to write that same sound, because black metal in its essence is a very punk rock mindset kind of genre of music. It's just as much DIY as punk rock is supposed to be. It's very anti-conformist, and I feel like unfortunately at the same time nowadays you have a lot of bands that are just kind of contributing to that conformity that's supposed to um, be against in the first place. So I
Yeah,
wanted to get that out there more, basically, make people like be like, "Hey, this album sounds really good. Yeah, maybe I can write something that's a little more." catchy or a little more chunkier and heavier or a little more melodic, like whatever the fuck they want to do. I just don't want them to think they have to be another like Mayhem copy or another Dark Funeral copycat or something like that.
That's a really neat approach to black metal, and I feel like maybe the genre wouldn't have quite the same reputation it has nowadays if the genre itself didn't, have those conformist values. But
Mhm.
might be a bit of a controversial statement, but I think it still stands.
Oh yeah, I mean when I first heard the term safe black metal, I cringed a
Oh,
little
that
bit.
that is the absolute fucking worst thing I've ever heard. Like, metal in general is not supposed to be safe. I don't
Like,
understand why black metal is the only genre. I know why black metal is the only genre being targeted, but like,
yeah,
you
like
know,
I understand. You don't if you don't want to listen to someone because you don't support the values they support or whatever it is, that's fine. But to like create this like safe bubble term for a genre that's literally hateful, that has like people that literally, if you go back to second wave black metal bands where they literally burnt down churches and murdered people, like it's kind of funny to see how it's gone from that to now people like witch hunting black metal bands. Like the story with Watain was a funny one when they had to actually fire their guitarist because someone pulled up deep down in the internet of like an old picture of like their guitarist like with some other guys, and I don't know one way or another. The guitarist's claim was that he was doing it out of jest, like jokingly, but he was doing a Roman salute in a picture, and Watain was like, you know what, we're not even going to take the risk with this dumpster fire, and they just let him go. And I'm
it's
like,
kind of
damn.
it's kind of strange how black metal bands seem to be the highest target of that. Um, Although in recent years, I've also seen even like Slayer has gotten targeted for that, but it's like, it was the 80s, 90s, sometimes even, and they were,
Every
ev-
band used that kind of imagery. I mean, look at
yeah,
look at Motorhead. Lemmy wore an iron cross while he was performing.
they collected Nazi memorabilia. But the thing is, rock and roll, metal especially, it was all meant to be shocking, right? And
Hmm.
it's kind of hard to find something that, especially in that time period, was as shocking as doing stuff like that. Um,
Hmm.
it seems like a lot of people who are trying to, make metal very safe don't really understand the value of shock value when it comes to marketing a
Yeah.
band. Uh, you know, I don't think any like rebellious teenager is gonna go, "Oh, that band probably rules. They're super safe." Like,
Yeah.
I certainly didn't get into metal because I thought that it was, that it was gonna make me feel safe. I was like, "Holy
Yeah.
shit!"
People want like extreme stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It was like Morbid Angel had the shirt, extreme music for extreme people. Uh,
Hmm.
it's kind of the idea is that it's not meant
It's
to
supposed
be.
to be.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
supposed to be unsafe. It's supposed to be uh shocking and even outlandish. Uh
Now that isn't to say that metal can't be uplifting, because for example, "Steel Thyself," that track to me is a very uplifting track, because the whole, even the phrase "steel thyself" to me is like about hardening yourself, preparing for um, difficult times and strife. I mean, there's literally a line in there where I wrote, um, remember, the darker the night, the more beautiful becomes morning's light. And that's the thing, is like metal isn't particularly supposed to be intentionally offensive, but it's not supposed to be safe either. It's just freedom of expression.
Well, when I think back to the early days, they often were, intentionally shocking or outlandish, because they were sort of
I'm
at
looking at
war.
you, anal cunt.
I was thinking, they were sort of at war with the mainstream because the at the time, the culture was really really out to censor the music, to even get it pulled from shelves. So I think that a lot of what went on, especially back then, was really more of a an attempt to kind of say fuck you to the people
Hmm.
that were out there literally basically trying to put them out of a job because they didn't like their music, which
Hmm. And that's
obviously.
kind of like Othalan's drive, though, too. Is again, it's like we've been talking about like safe black metal and how that's like a thing now, and I want with Othalan to be able to um, kind of bring back that attitude per se of like freedom. Like, you stop boxing yourself into something because you don't have to agree with what someone thinks. But as soon as you cut yourself off from something, um, you're instantly like missing out on brand new experiences and whatnot. Like municipal waste, big example. I have friends that are conservatives and obviously municipal waste has a t-shirt with Trump literally blowing his own brains out, so you can tell that they're anti-Trump. But then my buds will still love the shit out of municipal waste because they're not going to let that bother them because municipal waste rules. And
That they do,
that's the
my
thing that I
friend.
want.
That they do. That new album was so killer. I loved it.
That's what I want to like bring. Like now, when I'm writing my music for Othalan, that's not what I'm immediately thinking about when I'm writing the music because my mindset just innately is already of just making it into whatever the hell I want it to be.
Yeah,
But
well,
in
that
an afterthought of it, that's what I want it to be, is to make people just stop boxing themselves into stuff.
yeah, well, and that's kind of the mission statement here at Curb Stomp too. Is that we want to make we want to make the music dangerous again. Dangerous again. We
Hmm.
want it to be you know we want to bring back the original feeling of metal, and how it how it garnered controversy and felt dangerous, because for one thing, that's how bands made money back then, was
Yeah.
because mom said, oh, you can't listen to Slayer, they're evil, and that attracted people to their music in the 80s.
Hmm.
um I feel like there are so many bands that are so focused on being safe and being like palatable to the mainstream that they kind of forgot what what sold is pissing off the mainstream in the early
Hmm.
days. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that we've definitely succeeded in that pretty well. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously you saw it in at the very beginning that people got very angry with us, and there are people who, to this day, still get fucking furious with us anytime we post anything, because they just cannot stand our attitude.
I will openly hate on pop punk bands.
Right on. Pop punk is
You
trash.
know, listen to what you want, honestly. But if you're
Yeah,
gonna pay like $500 to see My Chemical Romance perform live again, they're not doing it for the fans. They're doing it because they needed more money. If they actually cared about the fans, they would have worked something out with their like manager and the label that was setting up the tour and whatnot.
yeah,
That's insane.
they would have done what any punk band does: go and play a club for $20. It's like,
Or play basement shows,
yeah,
whatever you gotta do.
it's not what it's about though. I remember we had somebody working with us that got very very not going to name names obviously, but very angry with us, still angry with us because we didn't feel that they quite fit the spirit, especially in the way that they talked about the underground, which I found
Hmm.
very irritating and disrespectful, given that we're about elevating the underground and pushing them as far as as far as we think they can go. So
Yeah. This is quoted from Tyrant. If you're an underground band, you're just bad.
or
Have you tried writing good music?
or if you're
No, I'm totally fibbing.
or you're new, you're either bad or you're
Yeah.
new. That's just it's a matter of how long you stay in the underground, I guess.
But what if I'm both?
Hmm. Well,
Yeah,
sorry,
exactly.
sorry to say, you might not have a very prospective career ahead of you. Uh, I remember this individual got really mad over like metal elitism as well. That's just goofy shit.
Imagine getting your feelings hurt because someone has a different opinion. I had a phase when I think I was like 15 where I was like, "Oh, metal elitists suck. Just let people enjoy things." And nowadays I'm like, "Oh, you think this band's better than this one? Okay, that's cool. I don't."
Yeah, I mean, like you know, you don't like Iron Maiden. I like Iron Maiden. You know, you're not stopping me from
Now we
liking
want to
Iron.
kill each other.
Yeah, right. No, you're not stopping me from liking Iron Maiden. You just don't like them. like,
Yeah,
oh no, I'm
I
gonna
think
go home and suck my thumb and cry.
it's funny. I have had a few people when I've had disagreements on my social media before, where one of the first things people will try to go for is they'll say my music sucks, and I am unbothered by it because one, I don't expect everyone to like it, and two, I'm not going to lose any sleep over someone else not liking it because I love it. I love my own music,
That is
so
the perfect mindset to have. Like I can't stress enough that like haters and opposition should not bother you, not one bit. If you have people that are that opposed to you that they're willing to go after, your music, you're succeeding, in my opinion.
you're doing something right.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, right. This individual has even gone so far as to go after me personally. And I just have a good laugh about it. I've had
Yeah.
other people come and like stalk the Curb Stomp page, stalk my personal page on Instagram, just so that they can message me first thing in the morning to let me know how much they hate me, and I think it's fucking hilarious. um, because there are some people, right? If someone
Yeah.
hates your music, and people really don't seem to get this, if people hate your music enough that they sit there and talk about it a whole bunch, it means they're still
You
putting
are
your name
promoting
out
me.
there.
You
um
are promoting me. Please hate my music.
yeah, right, like it you win at the end of the day. Like Tipper Gore in the 80s was dead set,
Yeah.
like, oh, these metal bands need to be censored, we need to get Slayer out of record stores. It's like, well, you just said their name. What do you mean?
And
Like, you're
there's at
advertising
least a
it.
handful of people. Yeah, and there's at least a handful of people that are going to be curious about, like, oh, um, what is it about this band that they're trying to take it off of the shelves
And then they go and listen to it, and that's how we got a whole wave of metalheads in the 80s, and thrash metal, obviously.
with alcohol problems?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would say it's more of an alcohol solution. I mean, sometimes you're bored at a show and you need to go into a pit without a fear of being hurt, so you drink. It's like I said, in my opinion, more of a drinking solution. What's the future like for Othalan? What do you want to do going forward from here? Uh,
Um, I don't always look too far into the future. I look more into like my immediate future. If
okay.
I were to sit there and look at the distant future, you'd get a very vague answer if I intend on writing
Well, like
much more music for Othalan.
what's the
I you know
immediate
I
then what's the immediate future like?
immediate future, I'm already working on another album. It's going to be called Way of the Bear. Kind of can already tell what it's going to be about. Um, I've I actually today started messing around with a new song for the album, and I play on a 7 string guitar. And I didn't use the B string once in my last album, but this time I am intending on making the riffs very low. I'm gonna keep it probably in the key of B, because the album to me is gonna be obviously black metal influence, but I'm also gonna write songs that like when I think of bears, I think of like just big, powerful, just chunky, and
Plausible.
they've got like
Yeah.
these low barks. So it's gonna be it's gonna have a lot more melodic death metal influence. I think this one's gonna. I still intend on having like the rock and roll kind of sound in there here and there, just because I think that shit's heavy. But it's especially playing on like lower strings and lower tunings. It's gonna be a lot beefier and a lot more melodic death metal kind of influence with it.
Huh. Uh, Earlier when I called you, I know you mentioned that you were planning on like cleaning up the production a little bit. It's a bit of an
Hmm.
unconventional move for black metal, but what what inspired that? Because
Cleaning it
obviously,
up.
yeah. I was just curious to know like what the thought process was behind like I'm a black metal band but I want the production to be a little bit cleaner when the average black metal band's like that doesn't sound nearly bad enough, play it through a speaker and record it through my phone.
um. So the thing is, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the interview, was production. With each song I write, I learned more and more each time how to make it better. And I don't want to go into like very, very clean sounding stuff. I mean, you look at modern melodic death metal bands like Amon Amarth's recent releases, Insomnium, um, Dark Tranquility. I don't know why I drew a blank on that one. A lot of those bands have like very, very well polished, clean sounds, which I like to listen to, but I don't want to go that far. It's just I also I can appreciate very raw, very underproduced black metal because there are a lot of bands I listen to that are very underproduced. But the thing is that people don't get about underproduced black metal is that I think underproduced is the wrong term to use because they are
It's
intentionally making
intentional,
it
yeah.
sound that way.
It's not done out of necessity, it's done uh on purpose.
So yeah, so there will be like literal like specific setups that they will do to get it to reach that sound. Like a lot of those like underproduced black metal bands will actually have some EQing and like a little bit of mixing in there because they're trying to get it to sound more grainy and fuzzy. Whereas like for me, I'm kind of trying to find a happy medium. Trying to think of a good example of like honestly a band I really love that I want to kind of reach a similar not sound but audio production quality level of is Uada. I think Uada does and Miwa, they both do very fantastic jobs of not being too clean but also not being so raw, which works out for their sounds because they do this very atmospheric, melodic play style, which allows you to really hear all of the different notes they're playing and whatnot, which again is what I'm going for because I use a lot of different like irregular chords in the songwriting, and I want it to be a little more clear when people hear that. I want the low chugs on the B string for this next album to like really be beefy, and I want the solos to like cut through
Yeah.
the rhythm like a knife and shit.
And there is definitely, like I said, I think there's like a happy medium, uh, where because there is such a thing as too clean. I won't go
Yeah,
too into detail, but I'm working on a video where I was attempting to make up with Metallica's Hardwired to Self Destruct album because I hated it when it came out. Uh, Spoiler alert. I didn't really make up with it. I
sucks.
ended up, yeah, no, it's a dumpster fire. Um, but something I noted, I actually took. I'm not really using a script. It's more I'm taking notes on what I listened to and what I heard. Um, the production is fucking sterile. Like there's there's nothing in the production of this. There's nothing in the production on the album that gives it any bite because there is such a thing as production that is too clean in metal. There definitely is such a
Yeah,
thing, right? You have to
and they
have.
definitely did that with Hardwired
Oh
because
my.
it's thrash metal, and what's one of the most important things, at least in my eyes, of thrash metal? It's just that palm muting the open E string. Like that's thrash metal. Like that has to sound good. If
Oh
you're
yeah.
not getting like the thrashing, palm muting, guitar riffs to sound like good in the studio, and you're trying to clean it up and take away all the mud and all the treble to where you're just kind of left with this lifeless sound. Like you don't have a thrash metal album.
And I will note some of the riffs on the album itself, were pretty decent. Like there were riffs on there that I was like, you know, that ain't bad. But
Mm-hmm.
the production just sucked all the heaviness out of it because there's a
Mm-hmm.
degree you kind of have to get to with metal where it's like, okay, it's not, especially like thrash, and it's unconventional for what you do, especially that you want to hear the notes articulated, but you don't want it so clean that there's no bite because that's really really important. You know,
Production is genuinely everything in an album, and I say that towards myself. I say that towards new upcoming bands. I speak to this towards any other bands that are working with Curb Stomp. Is your production is everything. Now, does that mean you have to? Again, you don't have to be super clean, but you have to know beyond the actual music writing of it, you have to know how you want the album to sound. If you want it to be higher treble where the music cuts through more and it's sharper, then you have to set it up like that. But then if you have something where you're envisioning this like powerful, like low, beefy, chunky kind of songs with just like heavy hitting riffs, you have to not only write the music, but you have to produce it to sound that way. Otherwise, you're not doing the best you could towards that album. You're missing out on things. And while Blood and Iron, um, I might eventually someday, going back to future plans, I might someday go back and revisit it and re-release it with whatever my future production skills are and have it more cleaned up. Because again, I'm still working on achieving the sound, but at the same time, it got the desired response from it. It got what I wanted from it. It is a black metal album
yeah, yeah.
kind of deal.
And like I said, definitely one of the most refreshing black metal albums I've ever heard, and potentially even one of my favorites of the year. So,
Well, thank you.
yeah, no problem, of course. Um, I know you've talked about it, teased at it with us a little bit. Are you ever planning on taking Othalan live?
Um, Planning on it 100%. It is sometimes difficult because the area I'm in, being a band from Tampa, Florida, obviously we invented death metal here, so everyone in this area kind of wants to do death metal. And it's hard to get people that are dedicated enough to black metal music to want to do a band for it.
Or anything else,
And
really.
even, yeah. And even then, sometimes the people I do find that I could potentially work with, just they physically won't be able to play the songs or whatever, which is weird because my songs aren't really that difficult to play. But yes, I am 100% working towards getting a live act set up. I actually have someone, the bassist from, I think probably one of the only other black metal bands from this town called Spinfield King. He goes by Leonidas, by his alias, and I've been working with Leonidas to have him play bass for me in a live setting because he is a fantastic bassist. The one time I jammed with him, I could tell right away that he was going to be a great asset for the band because he hadn't even learned any of my songs yet. I hadn't taught him any of the bass lines, but I just went over there and started playing. Like, I would start off being like, okay, we're going to start playing Cry for War. And he would just pick up on whatever I was playing and go. Like, he will be a fantastic live bassist. Right now, that's Othalan'S live lineup, and unless I can by miracle find a drummer that's not already in 10 other fucking bands around here to play, I'm probably just gonna have to do like a live PA of like my drum programming and whatnot, and have that
you
just play through live and have it just be him and I.
you mentioned that that fucking, the thing about the Tampa scene. That is a bit of a stressful thing for me, obviously, being in the same scene but wanting to be really just do, like, God's Hooks is going to be my more extreme project, but I would like to do just like a straight thrash band at some point.
Yeah.
Everybody here wants to do death metal, so it's gonna be. I'm gonna we're I'm basically gonna look weird on every bill I ever play, and I've come to terms with that. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's definitely a difficult scene to not be a death metal band in, for sure.
And then for me, it narrows down even more because I am a pagan. I'm a practicing pagan. Um, and all of my imageries for my band, down to like my attire, is pagan themed. It's obviously it's a little LARPy, but it's Viking themed. And so I will be a one man Viking pagan black metal band from tropical South Florida.
Which,
But
to be fair, it when you're dressing for a show, I would say that, being a little larpy or whatever is, it's perfectly fine. You're putting on a show. That the intent is to.
it's a performance, yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think it will make up for the lack of a full band live because do I believe one man metal bands can play live? Of course. Do I believe two man metal bands can play live? Of course. Inquisition's done it all the time. As far as one man band goes, I've seen Putrid Pile do it all the time. And
Toxic Holocaust too.
well, no, because he has a full setup live. He's a one man band, but he has a whole live act that like does all of the other roles.
Oh, okay. So I don't think I
I'm
haven't
I'm just
seen Inquisition or Putrid Pile live, so I didn't realize they just had kind of like a setup going.
Inquisition is a two man band, and they just play the two of them. And Putrid Pile is a one man band, and he only plays. Sean only plays live by himself. So it's like I believe that you can do those things live. It's just you also have to make up for the lack of the other bands. And that's why it's going to be very poserish of me to say this, but Axl Rose, fucking send me to hell, whatever, for talking about Guns N' Roses. But he, there's a quote from him that to me stands out a lot, is that when people go to a concert, they don't want to just see another guy in a band t-shirt and jeans. No, they want to see a fucking rock star.
Yeah, and I think
I think
sometimes that
that's
comes down to presence too, because you had Metallica got huge in the '80s with just t-shirt and jeans. But if you're just going t-shirt and jeans, you have to bring a little bit more to your show than just this next song is called such and such, and then play the song. You got to banter with the audience. Like, I hate God. We were both at that show. Um,
mhm,
yeah, they're not.
fantastic.
Yeah, they were great. They don't dress up really, but Mike
Uh-huh.
Nine was engaging with the audience. He was talking, he was making jokes, like he had a very clear presence. And you look at that and you go, they're not really putting on like a big show, but I understand what it is that makes them popular if their stage presence is like this.
Yeah. And that's what my intention is for when I start doing live shows is even though I'm going to be a two-man band and I'm going to start off obviously as an opening act, um, I'm still going to bring the same energy as an opening act as if I were the headliner everyone was waiting for. Now,
That is,
that's not to say I'm going to go in there being arrogant, but I am going to go in there and be energetic and yell at the crowd and be like, this next song's going to be fucking Cry for War, bang your heads and start playing it because uh, I don't want to just sit there and just rip through like my four songs or whatever as an opening act because I'm on a time crunch. Like, I want people to remember me.
yeah. Yeah, well, I think that um you make a very interesting point that um you know nobody is going to remember your music even if it's really good. Most of the time when you're playing a live show, people are going to remember you by your presence.
Hmm.
Nearly,
Especially if you are one of those opening bands.
yeah. Yeah, I would say that that's a very good point. You have to, obviously you got to play really good music, but you have to be a good presence as well.
Uh-huh.
You know, um, a band in some form is like a personality.
Yeah, I mean, to me, um, making music and being in a band is the same thing that people say about losing weight. Where when they say you're losing weight, it's 90% diet, 10% exercise. It's the same thing with music and being in a band. It's
Yeah,
10% writing music, 90% talking to people, interacting with people on social media, trying to network and whatnot. Because
and being
as
just impressive to watch live.
yeah, and like as much as I dislike that it is the way it is, you have to put yourself out there because you can be an incredible band but still not go anywhere simply because people don't know you. And I have seen that with my own eyes where I will go to shows and I will see like local bands that are just opening acts and I'm like, how are these dudes not blowing up? Like they're incredible. Like my buds over in Withering Earth are fantastic. My buds in Wireframe are fantastic, fantastic people, incredible musicians. The music is great, but they're not like a regular touring band where you see them like going on like world tours, and I'm like, how are these people not at that level? Because they sound fantastic, and the truth of it is simply if you aren't regularly busting your tail to like get as many connections and talking to people as you can, you're it just holds people back.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love going to shows for a multitude of reasons. Obviously, I love going to shows because I love the experience of a really good live metal gig, of course.
Fuck yeah.
But they're also fantastic networking opportunities. You could meet potential band members. Maybe there's a
Yep.
label scout in the audience. You know,
Mhm.
certainly when we have set ourselves up a little more and are ready to start signing bands, like we'll be going to local shows. Like if we're in a different city, maybe we're
Yeah.
I don't know, up north in like Chicago or something. Like, yeah, we'll definitely be going kind of undercover, not really undercover because we are metalheads, obviously. So we're
Yeah.
we're there to see a good show. But if we see a band that sticks out particularly, either we really like them or the audience really likes them or both, uh, it,
Mhm.
you know, extend them a hand. Uh, but I don't want to just sign unmemorable bands. I want to sign.
Mhm.
There could be a band who plays really good music, but they could do the Eric Clapton special and stand up there and go, "Thank you. This next song is called whatever," and then just play. You know, and I think that's another
Yeah,
reason.
I don't want to see that. I want to see Guar like splitting people in half at a show like that. That's memorable.
Yeah, I
A
have a
Guar show will always stick with you.
that was fucking man, that Guar show. Uh, for those who aren't aware, Tyrant and I are like actual friends. He's known me before Curb Stomp. He took me to see Guar, what, 3 years ago,
Something like that.
something like
Believe it
that.
or not, I actually have friends, and I'm a black metal musician.
I know, right? First time for everything, right?
Mhm.
And that was easily one of the most amazing shows I've ever been to. It was batshit insanity personified. And it was
Mhm.
so much fun to watch because I mean, they were crazy. And
Mhm.
you don't have to have like a big stage image. Sometimes it really just comes down to being crazy. I mean, I remember seeing. I just recently watched a video of Power Trip playing a cover of "We Are the Road Crew" by Motorhead, and
Mhm.
even while he wasn't singing, like Riley Gale was jumping all over the stage. He grabbed onto part of the stage scaffolding and like hung off of it and shit. Like, you know,
Mhm.
even if you're just going
Is
through the
anything to like make you stand out more? I mean, honestly, I'm gonna say it. Mayhem is a decent band, but I really think what made them as big as they were is just simply all of the insane shit they did during live shows. I mean, when you had Maniac on vocals for them for a little while, he would sit there just with a little straight razor and he would just slice up his arm during the show. Like,
Yeah, Dead did the same thing.
and people would be like, "Holy fuck! Like that? What the fuck? That's insane." People remember that. Now, I'm not saying you have to sit there and slice up your own arms, or even you don't even have to breathe fire like some of them did.
Yeah, like
But
Bathory. Uh,
mhm.
but
just
you
just don't stand there. Moral of the story: please don't just stand there.
yeah, jump around. Even if you're, t-shirt jeans, you gotta.
Show people you love your own music you're writing.
That's that is the key. That is the key.
Like, passion is everything. I am incredibly passionate about this music. I am passionate about Othalan. I've been wanting to release an album since I was about 16. I'm 24 now, and I just recently got access to all of the hardware I needed to make music. And to me, I might not have like put this album out and achieved like world stardom or anything, but I am incredibly proud of it either way because this was like something to me that was years in the making, and I'm definitely not going to stop now. I mean, like I said before, I'm already working on Way of the Bear, but then after that comes out, I'm going to keep going and whatnot because I'm just going to keep going till my brain runs out of ideas, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how I feel about God's Hooks, and I'm really excited for uh, getting this demo recorded. Uh, that's gonna be a lot of fun. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, I that's really all the questions I got for you, buddy. Anything you want to say in closing before we wrap this up?
Give me all of your money. Buy all of my music. Buy 10 different digital copies of my album on Bandcamp. Make multiple accounts and buy it all. I want every penny you have.
Well, thank you so much, Tyrant. It has been a pleasure. Othalan's Blood and Iron is available now on Bandcamp. Link is in the description. Uh, I am the Shredneck here for Curb Stomp Productions, and I will see you around.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.